Secure all cargo. All passengers aboard. Bowman, cast off bow line. Engine room, ahead 1/4.
Let's head down to Frontierland, Indian Village, and what would later become New Orleans Square. We're heading to the banks of the rivers of America.
Today as yesterday, the rivers of Frontierland are teeming with traffic. Rafts carry passengers to and from Tom Sawyer's Island. And the proud queen of the river is the Mark Twain.
Canoes, politically incorrectly labeled the Indian War Canoes, guided by actual Native Americans. A keelboat filled to the brim with excited young children and families depart from Frontierland landings. And the queen of the river, the Mark Twain, steam powers across the river, making its presence known with bells and steam whistles. Art Linkletter on the Dateline Disneyland special stated, Mark Twain, a proud symbol of the Romantic era where whole cities grew out of river ports, turning paddle wheels brought new people, new customs, and new industries to those fabulous ports of call. And the riverboat even brought up a new kind of music up the river from the city where the blues were born, where the Dixieland style was king, New Orleans. At every bend in the river, dramatic scenes from the pioneer days come into view. A settler's cabin is a fire set ablaze by flaming arrows, and wildlife is abundant, with many scenes not apparent at today's Disneyland's waterfront. Further along, scenes from Native American dwellings are present, and stagecoaches scurry down nearby hills. While the original river was rather problematic to today's standards, its wilderness vibe and historic representation of the importance of the rivers of America remain.
Mark Twain.
Well, let's go to the rivers of America. So the reason it's called the Rivers of America is because it's supposed to represent, at the time when it opened, the Mississippi, the Columbia, the Missouri, and the Rio Grande. And the story goes, I do not know if this is a real story, but the story goes that the night before they were supposed to break ground on this new river, what would become the Rivers of America, Walt was unhappy with the layout and design of the river. So he took home the project, worked on it himself, and the paper plans that he brought back the next day were supposedly the ones that they used to make the waterway. Now, is that just real or like earthquake bridge type stuff? I don't know, but that's the story. And when they started filling the Rivers of America after they had dug it out, all the water soaked into the soil, and Joe Fowler had to find clay so that they could line the riverbed, and eventually they were able to keep water in.
And it's the same water till this day.
No, it has been emptied a few times. They found like weird stuff in there, like
every time they empty it.
Bodies, yeah.
Bodies and barrels.
Oh my gosh, that's only here. And then before Disneyland opened, it had its inaugural sale with Walt and Lillian for their anniversary. They celebrated with all their family and friends, and they took it out on its inaugural tour around the rivers, which, you know, it's something I think about literally every time I get on. It's like, oh, Walt like stood here, like this. This was his baby. And so Mark Twain, as we discussed earlier, was one of the opening day attractions. And it was officially christened on the park opening day on July 17th, when actress Irene Dunne christened the riverboat using a bottle with water from a number of major American rivers. Apparently it was very difficult for her to break. I don't know if they put it in like a special bottle, but she had a hard time breaking it. But
it was tap.
It was probably, but they said it was water from the riverways of America.
It's my pleasure to introduce the lovely lady and famous star whom Mr. Disney has asked to christen the Mark Twain. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Irene Dunn. Hello, Irene.
How are you? It's listing.
It's listing a little because it'll be shoving off in a moment.
Yes, well, this is an authentic stern wheeler. Did you know that? 105 feet long.
Well, how do you know all this?
Well, you see, my father used to be supervising general of steamships in America, and my grandfather used to build boats like this.
I'll bet your dad would love to be here today, up there standing by the
I
wheelhouse.
can almost see him standing up there now with the captain alongside of him, just as though it were the greatest place in the world.
Well, now, Miss Dunn, you're holding a very special bottle here in your arms.
Yes, I am. You see, this bottle contains waters from all the leading rivers in America.
Brought here from all these towns by the great rivers.
That's right. So with these precious waters, I'm going to christen this boat the Mark Twain.
And there the boat is christened, and it starts on its daily trips up and down the rivers of America. Thank you, Miss Dunn.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I've got other places to go, and the Commodore, Admiral Joe Fowler, up there in the wheelhouse, looks like they're getting ready to shove off. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good ride. There goes the whistle.
It was the first functional riverboat to be built in the United States for 50 years. So it's a long time. They had a little bit of a challenge trying to figure out how to manufacture it and how to make it. And then when they were building it, Joe Fowler, again, insisted that they build a dry dock for it. And Walt was upset. He didn't want to take up all that space. But can you imagine if they hadn't built it? What would they do if there was no dry dock?
Oh, if they didn't build a dry dock?
Yeah, what?
They would never be able to work on it?
You always think that Walt's a visionary, but it was a little
and you could never
short-sighted
have,
right there.
you'd always need to have two ships working.
Yeah,
you couldn't have one in pair.
Dry dock.
And did you mention and how Mark Twain, the majority of it was built in one of the sound stages at the Disney Studios?
Right, yes.
And they brought it over. Yeah.
Yes. 50 years, first one. And then also there was the Indian Village, which was at this time was on the border between Adventureland and Frontierland, near Aunt Jemima's Pancake House. At that time, it wasn't too much. It was basically a collection of teepees with a dance circle. They included a bunch of tribal symbols that represented the sun, and it was done by an Imagineer, Sam McKim. And he based all of his information on reference books from the Disney Studios library. So I don't know how accurate they were or what kind of books they were from, but we should literally do a whole episode on this because it is so interesting. For the time, I feel like it was incredibly forward-thinking. They had actual Native Americans were there, sharing their culture, sharing their customs. They didn't wear Disneyland costumes. They brought their own regalia in for performing. So while they did have, yes, the Indian war canoes, quote unquote, and sometimes some what we would consider offensive now, the cabin, for the time, the Indian village itself was actually fairly forward thinking.
Yeah, it's really trying to celebrate its culture.
Yeah.
The right way. Yeah.
Oh, and then in December of 1955, the Mike Fink keelboats opened. They debuted on Christmas Day. And there were two of them. There was the Gullywumper, which belonged to Mike Fink, and the Bertha May, which belonged to Davy Crockett. And the original boats that they had on the river were the ones that they actually used when filming the Davy Crockett programs. So they were straight from the set. And then they converted those eventually to have seats, and then with windows on either side, and then eventually replaced with higher capacity boats so that they could fit more people on there. And it was considered a real deal on the river because it was a C ticket while all the other vessels were D tickets.
Oh.
Yeah. And in March of 1994, at the end of the summer, the keelboats closed for the season, and they didn't reopen again until March 96 with no reason given. So they were kind of wondering if it was actually ever going to come back, but it did. It did come back in March of 1996. But in May of 1997, the Gullywumper tipped over, full of guests, dunking them into the river. They were sent to St. Joseph's Hospital for minor injuries, and the keelboats never reopened.
I don't know if anyone has seen like pictures of these things filled to the brim with people.
Yeah, it's like packed.
But it's so funny though, because you have the people on top, which isn't safe already. But like nowadays, you have like these railings that like would totally stop you from like falling out. But before is like anyone, if you're sitting, it would be so easy to fall over into the water. Yeah, and you have like kids that like toddlers up there.
Oh my god, no. It's terrifying. Could you imagine trying to wrangle your children?
Well, and you know what's funny though is I kind of think of that same like scenario is like at Knott's Berry Farm. The fact that you can still ride on the outside of the top of the stagecoaches somehow baffles me.
That's true.
It's that same thing. It's like you're up high, bouncing around like.
They can't make any improvements to that. Otherwise, it'd be like some new code that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then in 1956, we get the Indian War canoes. And as Joel mentioned, that these were the two cast members that helped with the rowing were Native American men only men, and only Native Americans were allowed to do that. And they closed in 1971 to make way for Bear Country, and then they reopened the next year as the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes. At that point, they didn't care what your race was, as long as you were a man.
It was still a man, though, right?
Yeah, still only a man. Yeah. Women are too weak to row a canoe, don't you know? And then also
some men are too.
That's true. And then the same year in 1956, Tom Sawyer Island opens with the rafts. Before that, it was basically just a strip of land in the middle with a bunch of trees and foliage and all that kind of stuff. But they opened it with things to explore and climb through, and pretty much one of the only areas even now that's very much open to explore all on your own.
There's still dirt.
Yeah, still dirt pathways, and you can still climb on things. No one yells at you when you climb on stuff. And
there's some stuff you can't climb on there. No,
but no one yells at you.
Yeah, it's true. There's not enough cast members out there.
Yeah. Did you get yelled at, Matthew?
No, I'm just saying I would have put it past somebody.
See, well, I just never seen there's not really ever any cast members. Well, you look suspicious.
I got yelled at I was reading my school books at college. I was reading on top of the rocks there, and we got yelled at to get
Was
down.
it for reading or for being on the rocks?
For being on the rocks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like no homework.
No reading.
How dare you read?
You can't bring your homework to
Don't
Disneyland,
better
guys.
your mind.
Yeah.
When Tom Sawyer Island opened, it did very briefly allow fishing. They had a netted off area that was stocked with fish, and then guests were encouraged to take their fish over to River Belle Terrace, and they would clean it and gut it and chill it for you, and you could take it home at the end of the day and fry up your dinner, except that most people didn't do that, and they just carried them around, stuffed them in lockers, or dropped them somewhere. They just began to reek. You know, it would have been better if you could have taken it to the River Belle Terrace and they would have cooked it for you.
Yeah, this makes a lot more sense. I did not know about the River Belle Terrace thing where they would freeze it or put it on ice for you.
Yeah.
That makes so much more sense now. Like, why would they ever think this was okay? But that... Okay.
Yeah, just most people just didn't do it. Even still, you still have to, like, take your fish back across the river, the raft, and then go back over there and... We went to, like, line.
There was...
Get in the fish line.
Much easier to get to your car back then, though. So you didn't have to worry about...
That's true.
Waiting in line for the tram.
Also, in 1956, you could see parts of the Rainbow Cavern Mine Train from the riverboats, which opened July of that year. And then Cascade Peak lasted long past the closure of the mine train, which that closed in 1977. But the Cascade Peak lasted all the way until 98. So a good decade plus past when the attraction closed, we still had those Cascade Peaks. Although it looked a little different because the trees grew so big. They didn't look quite as majestic as they had the smaller trees. But and then, you guys, then the Settler's Cabin. This Settler's Cabin has a long, sordid history. It was there for 2 decades. It was out there. It was burning. There was a settler in front, shot dead with an arrow.
I don't remember that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Look it up.
It's hilarious. I remember the fire. I didn't know there was a dead body.
Well, it was like before our time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that either. I've never seen pictures of it.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Do some research, Matthew. But the captain on the Mark Twain would spiel about how it was done by an unfriendly Indian, quote unquote.
We're now passing beyond the limits of protection from Fort Wilderness. That village of teepees on the island belongs to a hostile Indian tribe that roams this territory. Attention, deck watch. Burning settler's cabin off starboard bow. Settlers who enter this great wilderness face many dangers. And as you can see, some fall victim to Indian arrows.
Even the Tom Sawyer Island map shows the cabin in the unfriendly Indian village. I'm just saying, if it was the native people's village and he settled there, like, I don't blame them. He kind of had it coming. What was he settling there for?
They're teaching history right there.
Yeah,
like exactly why. Yeah.
Exactly.
How terrible we were.
The hard facts. We were. White people were shits. And then in the 70s, it was changed to say that he was attacked by river pirates, and the fire was turned off due to the energy crisis of the 70s. They added a Pirates of the Caribbean style flame inside, but does not work as well in a outdoor daytime setting, so it just looked really cheesy. But the fire came back in the mid-80s, but the arrow lodged inside of the settler was removed, and the story changed.
Still there.
Yeah, he's still there. He was still laying there, but the story was changed that it was a moonshiner's cabin, and that caused the explosion, like a Prohibition-era meth house, I guess.
Well, I'll be. Old Jed there's been supplying moonshine to the keelboats for a few months now. He said his business was just about to catch fire. It looks like he was right.
Let's see. So we went from hostile Indian environment in land stealing, and then we went to, pirates and thieving and murder. And now we went to drug dealing.
Yeah. This time, though, we are assured that the moonshiner is not dead. He was just passed out drunk. So real family friendly. This is the park that won't allow alcohol, but how many rides do they have where people are drinking alcohol? And I mean, so many. And eventually, in the 90s, the cellar was removed entirely. And then the story focused on an eagle's nest in the nearby tree that was in peril because the settler's cabin was on fire, I guess.
Settler's cabin afire off starboard bow.
Yeah, I see it. Poor souls. I'm afraid we're too late to help.
Captain, pardon my opinion, but it looks as if that fire was caused by just plain carelessness. Those folks aren't only losing their own home, but the home of those eagles as well. My sympathy goes to the eagles.
Yeah, looks like the signs are clear. Man is in the forest.
And then in the early 2000s, the flames were turned off again, and there was really no reason given as to why they were turned off.
Due to another energy crisis?
There's stories that float around. Oh, yeah, seriously. That the gas line needed replacing, but it would be too costly. That'd be Paul Pressler. And another story was that the flames were a victim of California's strict emission standards now. It's basically left abandoned until it was set up to look like a lived-in homestead in 2010. And the sign erected said that it was Mike Fink's home. And then they put the defunct keelboat over there. Bing, bang, boom, a storyline. And then when the river closed in 2016 for the changing of the area for Galaxy's Edge, the cabin was demolished, and then a new one was built with no flame effect, just a plain settler's cabin.
I mean, if they really wanted to be current, they could just set it on fire, and that area could be the California section.
It's true.
Just always on fire, never turns off.
Seriously, man. And then in 1958, the sailing ship Columbia joined all of the rest of the water attractions. In case you didn't know, the sailing ship Columbia is not a pirate ship. It's a replica of the first American ship to circumvent the entire globe. And that's for our friend Brian, who tells me that every time someone says it's a pirate ship.
I mean, it is at nighttime.
It is at nighttime. Yes.
Which we saw half naked people on the Columbia.
Oh
the other
yeah,
day.
this is a good story. I was shocked. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should come back here.
Joel was like, there's a girl in a bra on the Columbia.
Is it a bra or a bikini?
No, it was the bra. So what happens after they do their segment, and on a cloudy night, it's really bright. Like you can really see what's happening. So we were standing right where the canoe.
This is in Fantasmic?
At the end of Fantasmic, or during Fantasmic. Okay. So if you are standing where the canoe entrance is, the dock for them to unload the Mark Twain and the Columbia for the cast members in Fantasmic's right there. They come by and you can see them perfectly fine because it was cloudy and it's light enough. And those cast members need to run off to the other side, probably to get on Mark Twain or do another segment in Fantasmic. Right. So they start stripping right there before they even get off and like full on like down to their bra. I'm like, what are you doing? Like
that's crazy. I thought it was a guest like earlier in the day, but oh wow.
No, but the whole time you've got
there's a hot Disney tip for you.
You've got Elizabeth Swann and Jack Sparrow like waving to the crowd like they're trying to distract you.
Don't look at the half-naked people behind me.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to those people.
They need like erect a little pop-up dressing room. You could just like jump
I
in.
was really shocked that they were just. I'm like, just get them off the boat.
Maybe they don't realize that you can see on a cloudy day. Oh my gosh!
I think they just don't care. They're like, I got to get this done. I got to change, or I'm not going to make my mark. So
that's probably true.
Twain.
Mark Twain.
You said they're not going to make their mark, and I said Twain.
Good. I got it. Clever.
Okay, just making sure.
But one of the cool things about the sailing ship Columbia is that Joe Fowler, here he is again, Mr. Bodie McBoderson, told Walt that it was customary to put a silver dollar under each mast before the mast was set. So Walt Disney personally set one under each of the Columbia's 3 masts. I wonder if it's still there after all this time and all the refurbishments it's been through. Like, I wonder if they've ever had to like remove those.
Never existed. It's all made up stories.
Wow, Joel, you're hurting my Disney fact soul. And then for the Columbia's christening, that was led by Gretchen Campbell Richmond, who was the wife of Alfred C. Richmond, who was the commandant of the United States Coast Guard at the time. So there's that. In 1960, the Rainbow Caverns mine train was renamed to the Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, and the refurbished track was extended to include a loop along the banks of the rivers of America. And
it was an upside down loop. It was
no. That's a good clarification. Yes, a horizontal
loop in a circle.
With that upgrade, the river's bank got upgraded to include waterfalls and trestles and caves to drive over, so it really kind of enhanced that whole area over there. And honestly, not much else really happened to that whole area. It stayed very much the same until in 1992. A little show came out called Fantasmic. They added, I believe, at least currently, there are currently 21 fountains and 6 whale tails in the rivers of America. And of course, they added the pipes for the flames and all that. And Harper's Mill was added as a stage. So you can kind of go over there and walk around and explore it. But after Tom Sawyer Island was rethemed to Pirate's Lair, it was renamed to Lafitte's Tavern, which I did not remember that when I was looking things up. And I just want to tell you guys that Lafitte's Tavern is not a real tavern, so don't try to go get a beer over there.
Very missed opportunity, right?
Yes.
I'm still all about building a bridge from Frontierland side, from the front, like where Cascade Peak was, building the bridge. It would have to be pretty, no, it's not a bridge. It needs to be a tunnel. It needs to be a tunnel from Frontierland side, from Cascade Peak, where it used to be, go underneath right there to Tom Sawyer's Island, and then you could have establishments like eateries or a tavern on the island, and people could easily get in and out of there.
Wait, would it go under the river?
It would go under the river. It's 6 feet. I mean, we could make this
until
happen.
It collapses.
We're going to talk about Big Thunder in Paris in a second here.
That's
true.
Does
this, so.
And then in 2010, the Imagineers took what had been formerly the informal concept of the waterways and the 4 different rivers that it represented, and they made it a much more fleshed out idea, adding location-specific plants and rockworks around the river's edge to represent better the different environments that you would encounter on those rivers.
I'm glad you bring that up. Sorry to interrupt. I thought that was really cool when they did this back then, because I'm like, this is so smart. Like, before it was just kind of made up, like here's some great like lush plants, but it didn't really fit for where it's supposed to be. And then they really built like this is actually supposed to be here for that river.
Yes, it really brought the whole river's story to life. It was already such a cool place. Like, it's already going around there. It's beautiful, and it's always an enjoyable experience to go around the river. But just taking those extra steps to flesh out that whole concept was really cool. The river closed in 2016, as I mentioned before, to change the waterway for Galaxy's Edge. And when it reopened in 2017, they added a whole new section, which was the Columbia Gorge section, which is where I'm from. Well, not from Columbia Gorge, but close. And it came back
in Washington,
with,
people.
Yes, it's Washington. It came back with 5 additional waterfalls, more trestles, and they included other improved Native American village scene, where they added more to it, and they put the chief up on a high pedestal, not pedestal, but like a high thing. He's waving.
And the murder beaver.
And the murder beaver munching, the beaver munching through the bridge. And now that as I say that, what I wrote, I realized that beaver munching sounds a little bit terrible. So I'm going to say the beaver gnawing through the bridge.
Okay.
And there you have it.
I mean, call it what you want, but
it's beaver munching.
It's beaver munching.
And now every time you see it, you'll think of that.
Yeah. I do really appreciate how the trestle bridges that were built for Galaxy's Edge and that whole, all the rock work and everything, the new waterfalls built.
And the left turn.
The left turn, yes.
That comes a little later down the road, down the train tracks. But I do really appreciate how I felt like that was one time they actually made a concept art, and I looked at it, I'm like, this is going to happen. Like, that's no way it will look anything like this. And I think they actually did a good job on really.
They really did. If I'm going to be honest, that is my favorite part of Galaxy's Edge. I honestly, because that whole section when you're on the train and you're riding through it, it is so relaxing, it's so peaceful, and it's honestly beautiful. And so, yeah, that's probably my favorite thing that came out of Galaxy's Edge was that added scene and all the extras that they put there.
Well, and also so many people were complaining and very concerned because they did shorten the river a little bit. So they moved it in a little bit when they built this area. Nothing you would have really even noticed if you weren't totally familiar with it beforehand, but they did shorten it. And then they had a ton of huge trees, very lush in that area. And it did look really great during fall when they had some of the leaves changing in that area. But I was really concerned that, well, we're going to really lose this like quaint little area. But if you really think about what they've replaced and put there, they've really improved the area, enhanced it. And it's not just a bunch of trees. Now there's some really nice added elements to this section.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that it for Rivers of America?
Yep.
Thank you, Beth. I've learned some new things on that, so that I appreciate the.
Wow, I feel honored to have taught you something, Joel.
I just need to go back and find the dead body with the arrow.
You should easily be able to find it.
Well, what do you have to tell us, Joel?
Well, I was going to move along to, we're going to mainly focus on Disneyland Paris, but before we get to Paris, I want to talk about the other ones. I didn't feel like we couldn't talk about all of them in great length, and Matt didn't do any research, so I figured I would just do a couple of items here from each.
He doesn't even know what you're saying right now, because
I know he took off his headset.
Off for a second.
Perfect. We'll hear about it later. Yeah. So we'll go into, of course, naturally next came Magic Kingdom. Magic Kingdom, I would say it's very similar to the Rivers of America. There's probably a little less features or elements or whatever you want to call it now around the banks of that Rivers of America. It's kind of more natural state to Florida, I would say, in the back area. But it's really much like how Disneyland was before they built Galaxy's Edge. Their current attractions, they have a Liberty Bell riverboat, which is similar-esque to Mark Twain, but it's the Liberty Bell. And then they have Tom Sawyer Island there as well. They have Aunt Polly's? Not Becky. So
Aunt
they have
Becky.
Tom and Becky, right? No.
It's Tom and Becky, yeah, but she's not the aunt.
She's not the aunt of Tom, no. That would be Game of Thrones here. So there was Aunt Polly's, though, which it still exists. I doubt it was open this last summer, but they have they had like a quick service restaurant on the island there.
Is it like fried chicken? You know?
I think it's been several things over the years, but
okay.
I don't know if
I don't think it's ever been like open when I've been there.
It's been many years, I think, since it was last open. I could be wrong. And I do think you could still go into that. You can still go in the fort there, where you can't go in the fort any longer in Disneyland.
Yes.
That fort is bare bones, though. They don't have as I think the dioramas or the show scenes that are within that maybe are a little lackluster compared to what Disneyland once was, but they do at least still have that area that you can walk through. And keep in mind, you used to be able to shoot guns at people at the in the fort. I cannot believe that even when I was a kid, I could do that.
I can still hear that sound too, the fake gunshot sound.
Yeah. But those have been removed.
Wasn't it due to an injury?
I thought it was because that kid got his finger cut off.
That's right. Yeah. It wasn't even
gone. It was gone well before that.
Yeah, that's a good point. But anyway, that doesn't exist anymore. And then you have some former attractions. They did have the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes. I didn't look up when they closed, but it was a long time ago. And then they also had the Mike Fink keelboats that also closed a while ago. And that's really, that's Rivers America. They have. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and their Tom Sawyer Island, they have a pretty extensive labyrinth of caves.
Yes.
Do not go with Matt in his caves.
Because they're really hard to get out, and then when you start laughing, and you may or may not have farted in the cave, and you had to backtrack through your own smell 3 times.
They renamed it to Matt's Dutch Oven.
Yeah, it was
That's the new restaurant that took over Aunt Polly's.
You make pies.
Beth was dying the entire time.
I was like, oh my God, please let me out.
And then if we go, we'll move on. We'll go to Tokyo Disneyland. And so that, it's a little different in terms, they have a train that goes kind of more around that river because their train does not go around the whole park at Tokyo. There's a lot of people say it's because if they had to have different stops, then they have to charge it for the government of Japan. Like if you have a train or a mode of transportation, you have to charge to ride it. Just like their monorail system there, you do have to pay to use that monorail.
Weird.
I don't know if that's really true for this case, but that is what I've heard a lot. And I've heard some counter stories to it, but it does seem like that's legitimate. Nevertheless, so that does have that train. It's called the Stillwater Junction, is where that train station is. That goes along most of it, and then it goes around their Jungle Cruise. And then that river passes through Westernland and Critter Country. They don't have Adventureland there. They call it, Frontierland. They call theirs Westernland. And their attractions, they have Mark Twain Riverboat, which I think is identical. And then, best name ever, the Beaver Brothers Explorer Canoes.
Is that from Brother Bear, I'm assuming?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't know why it's called Beaver Brothers.
I just assumed it would be from...
Yeah. And then they also have a Tom Sawyer Island there. And then if we move ahead, we're going to skip Disneyland Paris for just a moment, and we'll go to Hong Kong Disneyland, which opened in 2005. They don't have a Frontierland there, so they merged the Rivers of America with the Jungle Cruise, and they have the Jungle River Rafts that now travel around the Rivers of Adventure.
That's so cool.
It's so cool.
Their center really pretty.
It's gorgeous, yeah. And that's more of a tropical climate, and it has I feel like more lush foliage. And then they have the Tarzan's Treehouse that's on the island there. And then they also have their river is much larger, much wider than what you would experience in the States.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Got all that space there too, so.
Yeah. And their Jungle River, their Jungle Cruise they have a lot more, they have more show elements, or at least bigger show elements, especially towards the end.
Fire,
yeah. Fire. So it's pretty cool. And then if we go over to Shanghai Disneyland, they really don't have a Rivers America or really an equivalent. I did just throw out their Treasure Cove because it is a large waterway that has an island. It's very small in the middle. It's on if you're going down, what do they call it, Mickey Mouse Avenue? Mickey Avenue. But if you go down their version of Main Street, it's going to be on your right-hand side, kind of where Arch of Tomorrowland is at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom. But they're Treasure Cove. They have a little island in the middle. It's their pirate-themed area. They have the shipwreck shore. They have Explorer canoes, though, there, which that's why I bring it up, because they do have the canoes that go around. But that's also a very large waterway, which is very wide. And that cove is surrounded by Adventure Isle and the land that's actually called Treasure Cove. And then let's go back to 1992 to Disneyland Paris.
Arrivez le chargement! Tous les passagers à bord! Bowman, cast off bow line!
Et en surprendra bien d'autres.
Cher Monsieur Twain, merci, et merci à vous tous d'avoir voyagé en notre compagnie. Nous espérons sincèrement vous revoir très bientôt.
This one is very comprehensive. You will lose track of what I'm talking about here. It's very confusing, and I had a tough time because there's a lot of different names that we're all familiar with that all kind of, it's basically built all around one story, and it's the most comprehensive or full story, I would say, that was kind of built with the park, and it includes Big Thunder Mountain and their Frontierland and their Phantom Manor. All is included within this story, so it gets a little much at times. But their river is called the Rivers of the Far West. So it's a series of rivers found south of Thunder Mesa, Arizona. Their river is known, I would say, for the Big Thunder Mountain is actually sitting on the center island as opposed to Tom Sawyer's Island. So to get to Big Thunder Mountain, you load not on the island, on the
shore,
the mainland, and then you end up going, when you go on Big Thunder Mountain, you go underneath the tunnel. The fastest point of the ride is actually at the end, unlike the ones in the States and at Tokyo. This one actually gets faster at the very end as you go through a very fast spot that goes through underneath the river to get you back to the loading station.
They fixed their error.
Right.
I mean, I love that ride, but that ending is always a little lackluster.
Yeah. So I always thought that was really cool. So that's what I mean. That's the main difference, just right off the bat. It's like you have Thunder Mountain in the middle of that river. The boats there, you have Mark Twain, and that's based on the Anaheim Park's original riverboat, the stern wheeler. And then you have Molly Brown, named after the Titanic survivor, or also Jack Dawson's first-class passenger trainer. It's the only side wheeler in a Disney park. So
and the Kathy Bates.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. So this is where it gets a little confusing. May 16th in 2005, Molly Brown's engine overheated. Although there's no visible fire, there was smoke damage and to the ship as well as her engines. Guests were actually ferried ashore by the River Rogue keelboats, because they had the keelboats at one time there as well. And the engine system was badly damaged, and Molly Brown remained out of operation for many months. And so later that year in September of 2005, Molly Brown was moved to dry dock. They were smart, right? And they built that dry dock.
Thanks, Joe Fowler.
Yeah. And in March of 2006, Mark Twain finally resumed operation from Thunder Mesa Riverboat Landing, as that one was in dry dock previously. So they've had a lot of issues with usually only one boat in operation, one boat's kind of deteriorating. This was quite a while ago at this point, but Molly Brown was taken out of commission, and then Mark Twain came back. Molly Brown's long refurbishment wouldn't be completed until April of 2007. Great, everything's all great, right? But then in 2010, Molly Brown had to be rebuilt from scratch. And on March 25th of 2011, she reopened with a new recording of Molly Brown's speech. I don't think it was Kathy Bates, but it was in English. Yeah. But it was in English, and previously it was in French. We did see a lot of things where it's gone back and forth in Paris, where they had an English recording or a French recording, and it ends up being something or the opposite. The Mark Twain hasn't operated since 2011 and has spent most of its time sitting in dry dock, and now it's deteriorated so much that they're going to have to rebuild that one from scratch as well. So right now, Molly Brown does exist, and it's running, but I don't think they started on Mark Twain. I've been trying to follow that story, but it's a disaster.
Molly Brown is really unsinkable.
But not fireproof.
Not fireproof, but unsinkable.
That's why they had to bring Molly Brown back. Like, well, we can't have Molly Brown sink.
So crazy though with Paris, like their maintenance is so like odd. Because remember they had that period where just like everything was falling apart, and then things look great again, and then it's kind of falling apart again, and then things look great again. It's like, can we?
They also have to deal with the elements of the weather is terrible there. during the winter. And at least Disney fully owns it. They've bought Disneyland Paris, so there's no longer another stakeholder. It's all Disneyland, or Disney, and at least hopefully they keep up to the Disney standards. But there was definitely a time
which is kind of low nowadays.
Well, you can say what you want. Maybe the animatronics are not working and other things are not looking great, but anything looks better than 2002, 2003 Disneyland. I mean, that was paint peeling everywhere.
Remember the churro sign?
The current churro sign?
Yeah.
That's in DCA with mist.
The bane of my existence.
Yeah. It won't ever be fixed. There's a supply issue, Matt.
I could go down to Hobby Lobby and buy, hell, at this point, you could probably make it on a Cricut. And make everything on a Cricut.
Their Imagineering team's just printing shit on a Cricut.
They got to figure out some ways to save some money. So here, we're going to get into the story a little bit for this river. So the rivers connect to a variety of towns and settlements in the Big Thunder region, including Rainbow Ridge, Tumbleweed, and Stillwater Junction, while also having a passage to Grizzly Gulch, California. All these names should sound familiar to some, or hopefully to some of you. You have Rainbow Ridge, which is very familiar to Disneyland, and their Big Thunder Mountain and Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland. And then Stillwater Junction's over at Tokyo Disneyland, and Grizzly Gulch is the new area for in Hong Kong Disneyland. So all of this is not to be confused with Thunder Mesa, which is a mining town in Arizona and the first town ever mined by the Big Thunder Mining Company. That also stems from the never-built Western River Expedition attraction, an area originally designed for Magic Kingdom. It is the setting for Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and the rest of Frontierland in Disneyland Paris. Rainbow Ridge is a mining town and the setting of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Disneyland, as I mentioned. Tumbleweed, which was established in 1880, is a mining town and the headquarters of the Big Thunder Mining Company, ran by our favorite Barnabas T. Bouillon.
Good old Mr. Bouillon.
It is the setting of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at the Magic Kingdom. A carriage line advertising in Tumbleweed offers carriage rides from Thunder Mesa to Rainbow Ridge. So here you can already see we have Rainbow Ridge.
That's a long trip.
And there's already, right, you have a call back to Disneyland and a call to Magic Kingdom. And I don't know if Tumbleweed wasn't really put into place at Magic Kingdom until they built that Barnabas T. Bouillon storyline more recently, or if that was kind of always a part of that one. Yeah. Land grant documents within the queue also list Tumbleweed and Big Thunder Mountain's greater location as being around Thunder Mesa in the Western River Valley of Arizona, and with a painting incorporating elements from multiple incarnations of the attractions with a single range, suggests that these towns all exist within the Western River Valley. So these are great names, but it's just wow. Thunder Mesa is referenced in an advertisement, or as they would say, an I can't ever say it how
Europeans advertisement.
Yeah. For the Mark Twain riverboat in Disneyland's Rivers of America. The advertisement mentions the rivers of the Far West and shows the riverboat passing by Fort Comstock. And Stillwater Junction is a town which was built in Big Thunder Mountain, in the Big Thunder Mountain Range at some point prior to 1880s. The town was found along the rivers of the Far West, could be accessed by the steamboats of the region, and is a town located along Tokyo Disneyland's Western River Railroad attraction, like I mentioned before. So it's pretty crazy. It's a culmination of all this stuff coming together.
So a couple of things that I find surprising. So I never knew that Thunder Mesa was supposed to be Arizona.
What did you think it was? Utah?
I didn't. I just thought somewhere southwesty. I didn't think it actually had like
New Mexico or something.
Yeah, I didn't know it had an actual location. And then the other thing too was where's the sign on the Mark Twain? I don't think I've ever seen that.
Isn't that the sign that's on the side of the area that's now closed off with the elevated dock? And then you have, it used to be facing the walkway, and now it's facing the side and it's harder to see. And there's that painting.
Next time I don't
and there's even a hidden
that.
Mickey in it. One of the characters or one of the guests on the Mark Twain is Mickey Mouse.
You know what? Okay, I remember that, but maybe I've just never actually stopped and
or like put 2 and 2
read
together.
the sign. Yeah. No, now I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's funny. I don't think I've ever actually. I look at it and I don't see words.
Right, you just see that boat.
I just see the boat,
and now it's even harder to see because they moved it off to the side there. So the river there features, of course, boats and water traffic go the opposite direction there. So they go counterclockwise.
Like Australia.
Right. Like their toilets, right? Yeah. A familiar figure is there. It's Old Joe. It's been nicknamed from Pirates. Is also found along this river, just like you see in Magic Kingdom. You also see him in Pirates of the Caribbean on the deck with his banjo, which he's not playing. It's in the. It never made sense. He should be playing the banjo, but the banjo music.
Yeah, I always imagine that he is.
Yeah.
And then, oh no, he's just sitting there.
He's just sitting there. Somebody else is playing the banjo.
Some weirdo in his house.
Yeah. Anyway, in Paris, in Magic Kingdom, he's called Beacon Joe, and then in Paris, he is named Catfish Joe, and he is with his dog Moonshine. Maybe he was passed out once upon a time on Tom Sawyer's Island.
He was.
Or in the Unfriendly.
I hope he made it out of the fire okay.
And along the river, you'll also pass wildlife to be found along rivers in Washington, Wyoming, and Colorado, all gold mining territories. And then some other features and scenes throughout the Rivers of Americas there. You have, or Rivers of the Far West. You have the Ball Mill Landing. It's just a little port along the river, visible from the riverboat or Molly Brown or from Mark Twain. And then you have Big Thunder Island, which is Big Thunder Island is an island found in the Big Thunder Mountain region of Arizona's Monument Valley. It is an island found in what became known as the Rivers of the Far West by the indigenous Shoshone peoples as being home to the legendary Spirit of Big Thunder. I think there's a song that goes with that too, right? Spirit of Big Thunder.
Can you sing it for us?
No, I'll play it instead.
Oh, I love that song.
Right?
Can you sing it?
It's like something like, at Big Thunder Mountain Station, there's a frightening something man. His something feeble, and his skin has lost its tan. Something like that.
It's pretty good.
It's like, hear the legend of Thunder Mountain.
His body's weak and feeble, and his skin has lost its tan. When I asked him for a ticket, he turned and shook his head. He grabbed me by the shoulder, and this is what he said. Before you get on board this train, there's something you should know. When I finish with this tale, you might not want to go. I listened with amazement at what he said was true. And now, my friend, the time has come to tell this tale to you. Hear the legend of Thunder Mountain. If you weak of heart, then stay away from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad.
Maybe it's just the legend of Big Thunder Mountain, not the Spirit of Big Thunder.
I miss recording with you guys.
And in 1849, pioneer Henry Ravenswood discovered gold within Big Thunder and established the Big Thunder Mining Company to harvest it, chasing out the Shoshone peoples to do so. So he's a horrible person.
Yep.
And I don't think he's part of C, right? He should be part of Society of Explorers and Adventurers because he's a horrible person.
Well, there's a lot of horrible people in C, we discovered,
Right. In 1860, the Spirit of Big Thunder caused a massive earthquake which killed Henry Ravenswood and sunk a portion of Thunder Mesa into the haunted Phantom Canyon. Ooh. Yeah. Then you have Boot Hill and Ravenswood Manor. Ravenswood Manor, or Phantom Manor, was once home to Henry and his family. After his death, the townsfolk began to talk about the old house and the family that lived in it, and some say that Ravenswood still lives in the house, keeping an eye on it and his daughter Melanie. And the locals gave it a nickname, Phantom Manor. So it's kind of all built into this whole story of Big Thunder Mountain, and that's why in the Phantom Manor at the end, it's more of a frontier land or western land in the graveyard.
Right, you kind of go through like a ghost town, right?
The one thing I want to go to Paris for.
Phantom Manor in general?
Yeah, there's really not much in Paris that I'm drawn to, but I love everything about that ride.
Isn't there, do you remember the Phantom Manor that is inside the our Haunted Mansion? There's like that dollhouse.
Yes.
And I can never find anything online about it,
like
But it's
referencing
there.
it.
Yeah,
It's definitely there.
It's definitely there because we saw it one time together. Like
That's
we were all
the
writing or
only-
something, and I was like, "Is that Phantom Manor?"
And that's the only thing I love about Haunted Mansion Holiday is because we get that gazebo music in the queue.
Oh yeah,
From the music box.
from Phantom Manor.
I love it.
There's also Geronimo Landing. I don't have any details on that. And there's Geyser Plateau and Rainbow Arch. Yeah. It's portside. There's a beautiful natural arch bridge there. I'm sure if you ever look at pictures of rivers of the far west of Disneyland Paris, they usually show that arch. On the starboard side, you can see the Frontierland Geyser Basin. I went in a little bit of detail on this because they've spent a lot of work on fixing it up. And not just enhancements, but just fixing it because it was dilapidated for a while. So Jeff Burke, who's the show producer of Frontierland and Disneyland Paris, he stated, the natural bridge that's connected to Big Thunder Mountain's south side and then plunges into the river is styled after a double O arch, which is found in Utah's Arches National Park. The original geyser basin is based on Yellowstone's Mammoth Hot Springs. Beth Clapperton, who is the art director with Euro Disneyland Imagineering, was stating, during the most recent refurbishment, the existing geothermal area was broken up into two sections to provide more visual interest rather than just one type of treatment across the whole zone as per the original scheme. Kind of like what Beth was talking about with our Rivers of America at Disneyland, they went in and really kind of enhanced the whole area and made things just kind of make sense to the different rivers it represents in the areas. The left-hand section is to be the oldest and active and overrun with plants. The part still features the skeleton of the dinosaur, as children love discovering this element. That's kind of baked into the rock there. And the central and foreground zones feature the actual geysers. They erupt with varying timing. The intensity of geyser is now recreated with pressurized water and water mist. And I guess this is more efficient and less costly than the liquid nitrogen that was originally used. They added compressed air as an audio effect to enhance the experience.
Well, I remember those geysers from like photos that I used to see of Paris. That was one of those sections that had fallen into like big time disrepair. And they redid the entire thing, and now it looks great.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it here later, because what they did here is they made it easier to get to these show effects, which is like genius. They built it so you can go underneath these caves or this rockwork and actually attend to any of those show elements or show effects and actually work on them, where I bet before it would be really hard to fix them or repair.
Get equipment over there and whatnot.
Yeah. And then there's Smuggler's Cove from Designing Disney, this website, designingdisney.com. They had an interview with Jeff Burke and Beth Clapperton that I was talking about. They were saying Smuggler's Cove was created as a river pirate hangout, but it also used to practically serve the purpose of a ride load and unload area for the River Road keelboats. So that's no longer in existence, but just kind of like you've seen at other parks that you'll see, they've kind of repurposed those docks that were once used for the keelboats. And the design of Smuggler's Cove is based on natural caverns, caves, and river inlets that water was carved out over time along the sandstone rock formations that line the banks of the Colorado River, particularly where it flows through Arizona. So obviously some time was spent there and some research on making it just be right. And then they have this wilderness island, they call it, and that's just a small separate island behind Big Thunder Island, as they call it. So they have a little extra part in the back that is just called the Wilderness Island.
Can you explore that like Tom Sawyer, or
I don't think you can go there. It's just
there.
Just a little extra spot. They should have put a settler's cap in there for sure.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, that's the rivers of the Far West, or the rivers of America. I think theirs is kind of the most comprehensive, and I think it's just really cool they built this whole story. And we've gotten into this about Society of Explorers and Adventurers, where people complain that it's too involved, it's too much, but it's not, like, you don't need to know about it. It just, if you start to uncover more and more, it's kind of fun to learn about it and learn of a deeper story or history, but it's not something that, if you don't know it, it doesn't take away
doesn't detract
from your experience. It doesn't detract from your experience if you don't know the story.
It's just as you find the little nuggets while you're waiting in line, it's just kind of fun to put together. It kind of enhances your experience.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm honestly surprised you didn't mention though for Paris, Does anybody remember?
Doesn't still
the
go.
Phantom Cruise?
Yeah, but it doesn't happen anymore. So
I know, but it's still cool. You didn't
Explain
mention it. So the Phantom Cruise ran for only like a couple years. It was essentially like a gigantic Grim Reaper that pulled the Mark Twain.
It needs to come back.
But apparently it kept derailing, so that's why they stopped.
It was only during Halloween season, right?
It only went for like 2 years. I guess it was supposedly it had kept derailing, and it was just a pain in the ass to maintain. So they finally just said we're not doing it.
But
anymore.
it looked cool.
But the pictures of it, like especially like when you see the pictures where like they have like a fog, and I was like, I want this. I want that here.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like almost just as big, if not bigger, than the actual boat that it's pulling.
Yeah,
so cool. Like I remember what the first time I ever saw a photo of that, I was like, "That's a thing."
So yeah, that's the rivers across the globe, right? And I think it's just really cool that almost all of them kind of still continue this more or less a tradition of having these rivers of America, and it does mean so much, I think, to Disneyland and sets it apart from a lot of other amusement or theme parks out there. Just having this kind of space that could have been a concrete jungle, it could have been something without all this lush, nice foliage, or just having like these not natural, but looking like natural waterways in existence in a park like this really adds to the experience and the environment.
And the thing is they've managed to pack so much into it without feeling overcrowded. It has that kinetic energy where you feel like it's a bustling area, but it still has those peaceful areas when you're actually on the attraction itself. It's just really cool that, even though they could have just stuck a big attraction, they've managed to get multiple attractions that are enjoyable for all ages in that same area.
That's a great point. And the kinetic energy is very real, especially for Disneyland, where you do often still see both boats running.
And the canoes.
And the canoes.
And the rafts.
And the rafts to
and the strippers.
Yeah. And are they still running the rafts all the way around the river, or did they stop that? Because they were doing it briefly.
I don't think so,
okay. Yeah, that was...
I think that was
repairing
just,
stuff on
for Fantasmic, right?
Yeah. So it's something that we're happy to see continue in the parks.
Here comes the old Mark Twain, chugging along. And you can tell by the singing.
All right, well, thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. It was nice to get back together and talk Disney for a little bit and not just complain.
Yeah, I love
talk
doing
about
that.
the fun things at Disney and stuff we really enjoy. Wish there was some more of that. So that was nice. And hey, until our next happy hour, when you aren't able to join us on Off Harbor in Maine, you can always find us online. Our Twitter and Instagram handle is at Off Harbor, but you'll pretty much just see us always posting on our personal handles, and those are available under the show notes. Feel free to always email us too if you want to complain about anything we said or correct us. Feel free. Or if you just want to drop us a line, you can email us at podcast@offharborinmaine.com. You can also find some in-park recordings, background music, park ambiance, and attractions over in our sister podcast feed called Park Sensory. If you just search for Park Sensory, it should come up. There's no talking on that. You don't have to hear me talk. And it just goes right into audio recordings from the parks. So I enjoy even listening to myself, and I feel like that's a good testament to some enjoyable things to listen to on there. Well, everyone, wherever the world leads you next, we hope you carry a song with you and know that the promise of someday begins inside you.
On behalf of the birdies, flowers, and tikis here at Off Harbor in Maine,
farewell and aloha to you. We'll see you all next time.
Stay well and cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. That was my Derick.
Oi.
Oi. Oi.
Oi.
Oi. Oi. He was in Germany and he didn't do it for me. I'm offended.
Oh, that's pretty bad. You should have.